Perimenopausal Athletes and Beyond, a masterclass series bringing together experts in mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery. And today we have the incredible and the beautiful Jennifer Patrick. And so thank you for coming on, Jennifer.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's nice to speak to you again, Tanel.
Yeah, we share a common community of within our business group, and we love collaborating together because there's a real connection there on what we love, and that is to get female athletes, females in your case, any like females in general, moving and staying in movement. And so let me tell the world just a little bit about you. And basically, when I was looking at Jennifer's resume, there's just a whole lot of letters behind her name, from public health practitioner certification, master's exercise science, master's of science in psychology and health, master's of philosophy from the nursing school. There you have a real breadth, both in mind and in body, which I think brings you such a unique perspective. And that's just that's one piece of your education. And then it's the real focus that you have brought into the perimenopausal and the menopausal athlete that you have, and really looking at what's important for females specifically to live healthfully, live in movement. So, and then there's, of course, you're just who you are. So you're originally from Alabama. Like, this is the most interesting piece of you. Originally from Alabama and now living in Scotland. You're still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. So I've just visited my home in Alabama and got some nice vitamin D and sunshine, and now I'm back in the cold.
Was it love that brought you out there?
Well, no, it wasn't. Well, I met somebody when I was 20 years old, and I came back to see him several times, and then that didn't work out. He got married, but I came back probably 6 more times, and then I did 2 of my master's degrees here in Scotland, and then I just stayed. And now I'm married and have a lovely little daughter here, so I'm planning on staying.
Oh, so fantastic. It's a beautiful place. But let's get into what we're going to talk about today. How about it?
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay, so first, what we're really talking here to is the people. So who are we speaking to? I want to actually really kind of hone in on that first off. And when I say athlete, there's a lot of people that say, I don't identify with athlete, Tanel, and I want to keep moving. I want to feel good in my body. And how do I do that? And what do I need to do differently? And so that's where, that's who I really want to speak to. It's not necessarily the endurance athlete that's going out for a race. But what I continuously say is that it doesn't actually really matter whether you're the person who is wanting to get moving or wanting to do a race. What matters is some of the things that weave through. And this is where you really come in from a health perspective, from a movement perspective, not so much as a performance perspective. And so my question is this: what do we need to be aware of before, starting a program, or as we come back into different exercise programs, when we're specifically in that age of, our 40s, our 50s, 60s, it's never too late.
Okay, so after menopause, we tend to get more chronic diseases, things like heart disease, more dementia. Women catch up with men in terms of heart disease. So making sure that your heart is okay is really important before you start an exercise program. And you can do that in different ways: getting your blood pressure checked, getting your cholesterol checked, your waist to hip ratio, where you measure your waist and your hips and you divide the bottom by the top. You're looking to be under 0.80. So these just give you some indicators of your health, and you want to be aware of that before you start back on an exercise program. Also, just how you feel generally. There's nothing more important than intuition that tells us, something just isn't right. I don't feel right. Um, so I always tell women, when in doubt, get checked out. It seems like such a simple thing,
Yeah.
but women have so much on the go. We work, we have children. A lot of us are building second incomes on the side. A lot of us are cooking, cleaning. We have so much on our plate, and we need, before we add stress through exercise onto that, we need to make sure we're starting with a good baseline.
I love that. Dina Griffin and Bob Seebehar in another interview talk about popping the hood. Pop the hood and don't be scared from it.
Look
Let's
under
not,
there and
yeah, just and what does it mean? And I love this, and like what did these tests mean to us? How do you support people through that piece of it as a coach in UK? So you're the people that have come to you, they're like, okay, now I have this starting point. And how do you support them to get over that, like, oh my goodness, that fear of what does it mean? And how do we move into that movement of a number that you might not like, or back into possibility is really where I'm trying to lead you, is like, where is
yeah.
it that it's like, well, that's just a number. It
It
doesn't
is,
have to
and
be
you
your life
have to
sentence.
start where you are. You have to respect where you are. So you might not be able to start running how you or exercising how you were 2 years ago. You might have to start with a really good walking program where you have some pickups in the walking program, and where you start doing strength training gradually. Progressive overload is so important in terms of whether you're doing strength, whether you're doing a run walk program, whatever. You can't compare yourself to how you were. We want to start from where we are now. So that is how I would support them, is to, if you can only get out and walk 3 times a week, and that's where we're going to start you, that's where we're going to start you. When you start doing strength, if you can only do your body weight at first, that's fine. We're going to do your body weight, and over time, we'll gradually get you up to heavier resistance.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that your point there that I just really want to like get into is the progression is your own. It's your
Exactly. There's
progression
no
overload is your
competition,
own.
and it's so hard. And I do this with myself because I used to run half marathons all the time. I would sign up for one, do it, and be signed up for another in a day. And I used to do that all the time. And I can't do that now. I don't feel like doing that. So now I plan one big race a year, and that's enough. And the rest of the time I just maintain. So, what you sometimes have to do is realize that you can't do what you once did. It doesn't mean that I can't do it physiologically, but I have other things in my life that are more important now, and I don't want to train at that level anymore, and that's okay. So the big thing is just to be kind to yourself and to listen to your body and be respectful of what your body is trying to tell you. Um, and don't feel like you have to train the same way that you previously did. We need a little bit more recovery as we age. And you just need to respect that.
Mm-hmm. I think that it's such a good principles to go by, and it's also really hard because we really, like we were just saying, is like we want to have that feeling before, and what is the feeling really. What we're asking ourselves to inquire and to be curious about is, what is the feeling now? So let's talk a little bit about that, and specifically I want to keep honing in. So what are the general things? So you've mentioned strength training. We understand about the strength training, it's progressive overload. And where we're going to go, everybody, is we're going to actually talk and get into the bone health of things and the nutrition of it too. So we know that the strength training is important. And can you speak to a little bit more of the intensity that, like you mentioned, the heart, we need our heart to be strong. The heart is a muscle. And where we can sometimes get a little bit confused is as like, oh, well, that's for athletes. That's for the serious people. Yeah. And can you talk to, because this is the population you're really working with is, not like the athlete and the people that are coming off the couch. So you're really conservative and saying, start where you are, but we also want to get to here. So can you talk to us a little bit about that push and that pull and how you guide people in intensity for health, not just intensity to go and get the big, medal at the end of the race?
Yeah. And recently I listened to 2 professors from the University of Edinburgh really battle this question out about should we be promoting exercise just for general health and for mental health, and because women and people generally are really stressed out, and a walk around the park that does wonders for your mental health, and getting out in the green space and all these things. I mean, the research is even showing now that getting out in green space and being physically active is better in some instances than antidepressants. So that's a huge thing that we need to know. But the other professor was saying, yeah, but she was from an exercise physiology background. And she was saying, but they need to understand that we need to be doing some faster physical activity for our heart. And there is some research that correlates slow walking with death from all causes. So it was a men's health study, and it had the title of the Grim Reaper and slow walking. So it's really important that we do get some faster physical activity in. But like the people I work with that are just starting out or returning to exercise after a long time, you don't want to do that too quickly. So a run walk program that has intervals where you warm your muscles up really well before you start, and then you could start with intervals of just 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, and you'll gradually build up that way. But this higher intensity stuff is really important to get some. And I know I just did the menopausal athlete course, and all women in the age group 40 to 60, or most women, are really concerned about belly fat. And one of the things that Stacy talks about is HIIT training for burning belly fat. And that's great. But if you take somebody who's totally unfit and put them on it, her course was for athletes. And that's where we have to get this distinction right, is you're dealing with athletes and she's dealing with athletes, and I'm dealing with not the general population. You may have exercised, but you've been off and you're coming back into it. You have to gradually, again, progressively overload. But you can do that. If you were in a spin class, you could do, some 30-second spins. If you were out walking, you could do 30 seconds of jogging. And gradually these intervals will help you get fitter. So it is important though. And what the 2 professors, the conclusion they came to was there is no right answer. We need to be promoting physical activity for both reasons. The mental health benefits are amazing, as well as we need it for our cardiovascular benefits. So they didn't really get anywhere. I can actually give you the clip to that because it is just really funny to watch them, because they went back and forth, and the one from the exercise science was getting so angry, but we need to tell them that they need to do more intense.
And why it can't be both.
Yeah.
It's like there isn't one or the other. It is absolutely both. So I want to actually just come back to a point you were making. as we come back into exercise, or we're coming, one of the big challenges that we have is, so we're feeling the perimenopausal symptoms of fatigue, of lack of energy, just not feeling good. And how do we get back to finding that feeling good again? Specifically, and so we're coming from a point of more sedentary lifestyle, because we've just been like, we just can't feel it. And we're trying to get back, and we can envision ourselves moving. And so with the HIIT stuff, so for my athletes, yep, we do HIIT totally, and we have fast talk. If you're curious about all the differences of HIIT, we get really into what is high intensity interval training versus, short intensity training, like the short with a bigger rest. We talk about all of that. But when you're coming back into it, you said 30 seconds on, then recover. Is there a difference between HIIT, HIIT, for coming back in progressive, or HIIT for those that have already gotten there? Like, when I look at number of studies, they're giving sedentary individuals HIIT training in the same sort of 30 on, 30 off, or 30 on, 15 off, 40 on, 20 off, in the same way that I would give it to my athletes. Is there any difference for how you would prescribe it as they come into it? Because it's all perceived effort. It's not, the difference is, if we look at power, in my mind, and this is what this is a question for you, because I don't typically work with a population that is coming from a lower level of movement. They have a bigger base of movement. So how do you look at it, and how do you guide people in that progressive way into the intensity?
Yeah, it just depends on the individual and what they previously done, what they've been doing. Do they have any heart risk factors? I get a lot of people that have, heart issues, but the most recent research says you can give people who have heart issues HIIT, but again, you want to do it really, really slowly. So I always err on the side of caution. And
what do you mean slowly? Like, I want to detail here. What do you mean?
You want a number?
So not as many intervals, or are you doing shorter?
Yeah.
Intervals?
I would start out like, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, maybe just 3 times on a walk run. And then after a week, if they've tolerated that, maybe up it to 4, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. But I definitely wouldn't have them doing a HIIT workout straight away where they go to 85% of their VO2 max. And I wouldn't even use heart rate with somebody who's just starting, because their heart rate's going to be sky high.
They're going to go right into 95, 100%, because they don't have the flexibility. It's either walking with lower heart rate, which actually might be kind of higher, and then all of a sudden it's like fly off the handle. And so I love it, because I think where I want to go with this and understanding, it's just like your heart is a muscle, progressive overload. So if you are come from nothing for a long time, and you're coming into something in a movement, the progression might be 90 seconds. And then it might be 2 minutes. And then all of a sudden you're putting together 5 minutes. And what I'm curious about in your experience is, for those athletes that have a bigger base or history, an athletic history that they can come back to, that progression actually might be a bit faster than those who we would say is in the sedentary population. Is that what you're finding? Is that how you are supporting?
Yeah, and it tends to be that people who have previously, and this is just a general statement, that people who previously exercised don't have as many health conditions that you really have to be aware of. And that's not always the case, right? But most of the time, a lot of people who've been athletic maybe they've just had a break, or they've been working so hard, they're so stressed out. Um, so it's not been where they're completely sedentary. They may have already been walking, and then you could progress them faster than the other athletes.
Mhm.
One thing I didn't know about, I don't know if have you heard about Roboto? It's an exercise scientist, the one that did I was under for my master's. He's the one that told me about it. It's where the muscle proteins leak into your bloodstream if you go too hard, too fast. Either with it can be with cardio, but it's most of the time with strength training. So
Mm.
I'm really, really slow in my progression with strength training. Look it up, Roboto, and it's got rhabdomyolysis. It's not that common, but when I told him my population, he was like, I'm just letting you know, be careful with that because you don't want to push them too hard, too fast. So there's loads of different things. People don't like to hurt too. So if you start somebody who's not done strength before out and they get really sore, they may not want to do it again anyway. You know how you feel after you do a set of walking lunges after you've done nothing for a while. I mean, it's just like it would
Like,
put
oh my
anybody off who had never done that. Like we know that that's just um DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, but to somebody new, it's like, oh my goodness, I don't want to feel like this. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to progress everything slowly for my population.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's something to really learn there and to really hone in on, because no matter where we start, we always want it to be progressive in nature,
Yeah.
and the load has to be progressive. And sometimes we get to, this is just repeating what you just said, but like, let's just understand how quickly. Well, that's totally dependent on you, your body, your experience. And let's know where our starting place is, and then get there. And so how you're going to feel in your body is really, it's a place of curiosity, because we, how quickly, how different, what all those things become important to consider. So let's funnel in a little bit more, and let's specifically talk about bone health and understanding. We know, okay, so we've talked about the heart and intensity. It's important. We talk about strength. It's important. Can you talk about bone health specifically in relation to both the strength training and into relation to the nutrition that we need to have to think about bone health?
Yeah. Well, I think the statistic is that most of our bone strength is developed by the time we're in our 30s, right? So if you have osteoporosis, you need to work with somebody who's trained in osteoporosis, because there are definitely contraindications for moves you shouldn't do. Anything flexion like sit-ups where you're bending the spine. There's loads of different exercises that are not meant for people with osteoporosis. But from a preventative standpoint, especially if you're a younger person in your 30s and 40s, you still have the opportunity to preserve some of that bone mass through strength training. And you need to, again, we have to do progressive, but you need to get to where you're lifting some heavier weight. And when I say heavier weight, you're looking at a repetition range of like 4 to 6 reps heavier. But again, that's long after you have learned the exercises, maybe just with your strength. Maybe if you are doing a press up against a wall, that might be all you can do at first. And then gradually, we want to get you working out with dumbbells and heavier dumbbells and some heavier strength training. So that's what I would say in terms of the strength. In terms of the nutrition, there's a lot of things that are important. One is what you do in your younger years comes back and bites you when you're a little bit older. So, and I'll give myself as an example. I did bodybuilding when I was in my late 20s, and I had athletic amenorrhea myself for 6 months. And then I got it sorted. And luckily, my bone mass is still okay. But I did get it sorted pretty quickly in terms of I got my calories up and started eating healthy, etc. But if you've done that for long, long periods of time, it can have implications for your bone health when you after menopause. It can have really big implications. So, that's just something to be aware of and try to address it. The nutritional things you can do are that make sure you're getting enough protein. I know protein, sometimes it's the enemy, and people say you can get too much and that leaches, from your bones. But a recent study I heard said that menopausal women and athletes should get 1.2 to 1.6 kilograms of per kilogram of body weight. So protein is now not the villain. And with the protein, you need calcium, you need vitamin D3, and then you need K1 and K2. K1 is found in green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, your cabbages, your broccolis, those things. K2 is more in your natto, which is a Japanese bean curd thing. You can also get it from fermented products and from animal products. So you need all those things. You need sunshine if you can get it. Vitamin D, the best source of it is sunshine. Here in Scotland, everybody is recommended to take a supplement of 10 micrograms per day, every day. I take 4,000 IUs a day. And interestingly, when I get my vitamin D tested, it's always sufficient. It's never optimal. So it's not what you take, it's what you absorb. And a lot of that has to do with your gut health. I'm constantly working on my gut health, but I've had a lot of antibiotics in my life for various reasons. So it's not just what you take, it's what you absorb. So those are some of the nutritional things. Then some women can use HRT for your bone health. There's three things that HRT helps with. It can help with osteoporosis, it can help with brain health, and it can help with heart health. Now, I've got dementia, heart disease, and osteoporosis on both sides of my family. There's a small risk of cancer if you are, estrogen-derived cancers, but breast cancer is 90% curable. Those three things I mentioned aren't. So I'm going to take the chance, and I would encourage all women to really, really explore HRT. The HRTs that were back in the 70s were horse urine, and they have safer HRTs now that are more body identical. I've got a book here that I really recommend to people. It's called Estrogen Matters. Mm-hmm. It's by an oncologist. It's a fantastic book to show you how important estrogen is in everything. We have estrogen receptors in all our cells. And then after we lose our own estrogen, we're at a huge, huge risk of osteoporosis. So for me, it was a no-brainer. Yes, a slight risk of breast cancer, but here's a great thing for exercisers. You're more likely to get breast cancer. Yeah, that's right. If you're overweight, if you don't exercise, if you drink alcohol or you smoke, then you are to get it from HRT. So It's just to be aware. And I researched it like crazy because I was one of these people. I wanted to do everything naturally. I wanted to do everything naturally, but I wasn't sleeping. I felt horrible. And then I heard some great speakers talk about the importance of HRT for bone health, heart health, and brain health. Um, there's a Lisa Mosconi. She's written a book too. It's called the X Brain, the XX Brain, and it's all about women in dementia. And she talks about HRT in her book too. By all means, I'm not saying it's for everybody, and there are supplements that are phytoestrogenic that you can take if you talk. A medical herbalist can help you with that if you just don't want to touch the HRT. So I'm totally respectful. Some people will have known somebody who passed away from breast cancer and they'll be like, not me. But research it yourself and don't just discount it because you've heard that it's bad for cancer, because it causes cancer, because it's so protective in so many ways.
I think the point for hormone therapy or HRT, I think we're moving more toward hormone therapy is that there are solutions if you're suffering and if you are at risk. And I think that's your main point here is be curious, investigate, go see people like Dr. Carla DiGirolamo, who is, an expert in this. There are many different ways to address the challenges of perimenopause and of the decreasing estrogen. Estrogen, one thing I just really want to hit home is that we are not deficient in menopause of estrogen. It is natural. It is what happens to our body. We don't have to replace it. And we may need some support because there's a lot of other things going on in how we be in this world. There's so many different stressors that we've taken on, and the history of our bodies and our experiences will matter. So if we want to go and it is an option for us to explore, partly because we have all these things coming in at us and we may need to lift up our body to support it. It may need, and to your point, the natural way of trying to address everything, we might need to actually lift up our ability to get to a way in where we're not taking a hormone therapy and that we've come back into our hormones being able to manage the loads that we have placed our body into. There's no judgment. There's no judgment in that.
You've got to find what works for you. And lots of times, Tanil, it does come down to quality of life. Women try everything. They still feel awful. They're not sleeping. And this is something that's really interesting. There's lots of different ways to take HRT. And I'll give you an example. This is my progesterone, right? If you're intolerant to progesterone, which a lot of women are, it makes you feel heavy and horrible. You can take that vaginally. You don't have to take it orally, and therefore it bypasses your liver. So it's just to say, there's always options. So learn your options. And if you don't want to take hormones, learn, you can eat estrogenic foods, and that may have some benefit. Your soy, your tempeh, your edamame. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, edamame. Yep.
So there's always options, but knowledge is such power in the bone thing. Heart disease, cancer, dementia, and bones. The bone thing scares me the most because my mother has osteoporosis, and I can't imagine a life where I can't move. Movement is just such an important thing to me. And so, make sure you're doing everything you can to address, getting enough protein, getting enough sunshine. And test your vitamin D. That's another tip. It doesn't cost much to be tested. I do mine every 6 months. I send away a blood sample. It comes back. Sometimes it's low, sometimes it's sufficient, and I have had it optimal before. But it's good to know where you are because, like, sometimes I forget to take my supplement. And if I know mine is low, I'm going to make it a priority to make sure I'm taking the vitamin D.
Pop the hood, people. We've got it again. Pop the hood. I love
Yeah,
it. We're starting
exactly.
to, like, we really have themes that are weaving through all the interviews. Okay, so I have one final question for you. You've had a real diverse career and educational background. When was it, or was there one moment or experience that you had that you said, I really, really want to get females to get moving? What was your passion? How did you start driving toward this passion that you have now?
Yeah, I think just because it's helped me so much. I've exercised consistently since I was 12 years old. I've always been able to maintain my weight. I weigh the same thing I do now that I weighed 20 years ago. I don't diet. I think of food is nourishing, and that, I'm definitely not a perfect eater. I have some treats as well. But exercise and movement has helped me maintain my weight. It's helped me feel good in terms of mental health, like we talked about earlier. um I've been through some hard things in life, and I've never had to resort to medication. And that doesn't mean that if you have, that's bad. But exercise has always kept me from going down a hole when I've had difficult things happen.
Mhm.
And so I want other people to experience that. And I think too, I think it just improves your belief in yourself when you can do something physically. It just makes you feel better. It improves your self-esteem. And like I said earlier, a lot of the research is showing now that exercise can be just as effective, if not more effective, than antidepressants. So that I've just always loved it. I love to run. I'm a mother and a wife, and running is a place where I find my soul. And I live in a beautiful country. There's beautiful places to run here, and I just love it, and I want to share it with
So,
other
yeah.
people.
Oh, so great. Well, thank you so much for being part of this, and yeah, and for sharing your knowledge and where you're at, and helping us, for those that don't feel or that don't totally take on the athlete status, and that we've helped them in also coming into and being strong and being in health. So thank you so very much.
You're very welcome. And I'll just say one thing: the greatest benefits come from when you're doing nothing to when you start doing something. So after that, there's additional benefits, but if you're not moving, there's huge benefits in getting moving. So hope you
Awesome.
will.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks,
you so
Tanel.
much.